remember what treat you reached for when you came home for school, or maybe you stuffed in your lunchbox every night. Mine was these garlic bagel chips our local grocery store made, and we put them in this like big, giant plastic clamshell box. And I just sit there and watch Oprah at 4 o'clock every day. That was mine. I'm your host, Danielle Zapchenk, and I don't have any bagel chips with me, but today I sit down with secretly healthy home blogger and cookbook author Claire Woodhouse as she shares about getting out of the trap of comparison and the desire to slow down in our ever-producing world.
For us, I feel like it's so easy, like you were saying, is just to quickly move on and forget what the Lord has done. And just remembering, even in those hard moments, looking back and saying, God delivered me then, and He can deliver me now, and He will deliver me now. Even if it's not in the way I want Him to, His plan is still complete and His plan is still the best for me.
Here's my conversation with Claire Woodhouse. Well, Claire, welcome to the Parable Podcast. I am so grateful that you are here. We have a mutual person that we love in between us, and that's your mom.
Yes, it is. Thank you for having me, Danielle.
You're welcome. So, Claire, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you're passionate about. What do you do day to day?
Yeah, I am a stay-at-home mom of 2 kids, which is so crazy to me still. I have a 3-year-old boy, Cameron, and a 1-year-old girl, Raylan. So I am, how you say, pretty busy with them, just managing the house, managing them, and just loving on them, trying to love on them through the hard times as well. And I also run an online business called Secretly Healthy Home, which is pretty much just a healthy food blog, but I usually do pretty much just treats and sometimes snacks and breakfast food. I love doing that. I also have some courses online, like a healthy baking course. I have a meal planning course, and I also have a membership called the Smart Sweet Tooth, where I teach ladies how to intuitively eat so that they don't have to be on a diet anymore. They don't have to have fears with food, and that they can really just enjoy food that God has given us. It's a great opportunity just to teach ladies that it's okay to eat food and you can do it in a balanced, healthy way. So that's a little bit about me, and I'm so excited to be here.
Claire, where would you say that your love of food came from? Like, was that something when you were younger, you're just like, I'm just going to get in the kitchen and start baking?
That's a great question. So I grew up with 4 older brothers. So food, I ate a lot because my brothers would eat a lot. So I kind of felt like I could eat a lot, I guess. And I was also an athlete, but I definitely didn't eat the healthiest when I was in my middle school, high school days. I think because I kind of felt like I could eat more because I was an athlete, and I didn't really know how to listen to my body, which I know a lot of people don't at that age. And that's, God teaches us all of that through our lives. But then I think in high school, I had some friends that we just loved to get together and bake. And it was just our fun thing that we did when we had sleepovers. We'd bake cookies or brownies. It was so much fun. And then when I got into college, I was deathly afraid of gaining the freshman 15. Yeah. So I was just like, I don't want to do that. So I kind of went the opposite way. And I went very food restrictive, go to bed hungry, didn't eat enough at all. I was a college athlete, but I still was going hungry, which is just crazy to me. So I went through that, and I didn't really think anything of it. But then through all that, I really loved baking still. And that's kind of how I got onto the health kick. So it's all part of God's plan, even when we're in those deep valleys. I didn't feel like I was in a deep valley, but it was more of God was teaching me how to navigate through all of that and still showing me that I had a passion for baking. And it led me to the healthy baking route. And I just find recipes online for, healthy cookie dough bars. And I was like, what is this? This is amazing. So I would make those recipes. They were so delicious. And then when I started making those recipes, I would kind of tweak them as I went. And then I became a stay-at-home mom. And I guess I'll get more into that actually in my parable. But yeah, that's kind of how it started.
Well, you recently put out a cookbook, and it's about healthy copycat treats. So I'd love to know, growing up, what were those pre-packaged processed treats that you were always grabbing for?
Oh my goodness. Yes. This is why I love the cookbook, because it's all those favorite treats. So like Pop-Tarts, brown sugar cinnamon Pop-Tarts are in that cookbook. I used to love those as a kid. Zebra cakes are another one that's in the cookbook. Also simple ones like Chips Ahoy cookies or Oreos. I have a few different flavors of Oreos, pecan spin wheels. There's 37 recipes in that cookbook. So basically anything that you had growing up, or even if you have them still to this day, I'm sure it's in the cookbook.
So you have Cameron and Raylan. Now I know Raylan is a little bit young, but Is it easy for you to, or there's a desire for you to really incorporate them into the kitchen and creating these kind of meals?
That's a great question, because I used to more so with Cameron. When I just had Cameron, it was a lot easier just to do it with one. But one day I was trying to film and have him in the kitchen with me. And afterwards I was like, I am never doing that again, because it was just really stressful. And it's kind of like, I'm working and I want him in it as well. So I kind of just put way too much stress on it. And I was like, I don't want to get mad at him for what I'm trying to, incorporate healthy baking with him. So I wanted to make it a happy experience. So I actually don't really bake very often with them, at least film and bake at the same time. If I'm baking something and I don't have to film or take pictures or anything, I much rather than be there for that.
I do like that you incorporate the reality of what motherhood is like into your Instagram feed. I think you guys moved. I'm not really sure, but it was like you gave Cameron the phone, which I don't know how old he was at the time, but he's like going around, be like, this is the carpet.
Yes.
This is the Lightning McQueen. And I love that, because it's just like, you know what? This isn't all glamorous.
Yes.
And it's just like the sweetness of being a stay-at-home mom. And so I think that's why I think you've become so successful, Claire, is this, that people can connect and relate with you so well.
And I definitely try to be that way, because I don't want it to seem like we're on a different level, because I'm the same as everyone else.
Well, that's the one thing I like about our stories, is that when we really get to understand, learn more about each other, listen well, that's when we kind of see how our stories intertwine. Maybe it's not exactly the same, but it just helps us better understand each other, and just a greater appreciation for friends and family members. So Claire, I'd love for you to share with us, what is one of your parable stories?
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. It's so true that it really gives us a level playing field for everyone. So it goes back to when I started my blog, the Secretly Healthy Home blog. I started when Cameron was probably only 3 or 4 months old. This is kind of where my parable starts. But a question I get often is, how do you get it all done? And people ask that to me all the time, because they see my stories on Instagram and they say, how are you making recipes and doing videos, and you have kids and you have a house and you have a husband? And I always smile to myself, because whenever we look at someone from the outside, we either think, they're doing more than us, or they're getting so much done, or we think the opposite of, wow, we're doing way more than that person. So there's always that comparison, and it always leads to pride or envy. And that question always makes me giggle, because I do not get it all done ever. And that's kind of what my story is going to be talking about, is that none of us get it all done. And that's the beauty of Jesus, and how he did everything on the cross. We don't have to get everything done in this life. And life can be so cyclical of doing A, B, and C every day, or having these big tasks to do every day and just getting overwhelmed with all of that. And I just smile, because I'm like, we can't get it all done. And looking at someone from the outside in, it just never gives you the whole picture. And I think it's a good check on ourselves to remember that we can slow down, and it's okay not to get everything done, because we physically cannot, because that's how God created us. He created us to have limitations, so that we need to rely on him. So when I started my blog with Cameron, he was 3 months old. So pretty simple. He slept all the time, as newborns normally do. So I had a lot of time to work on it, and I got it started, I got it going. And it was pretty simple to balance the two, having a baby and having a food blog. And it was really great, because I had a lot of time to build up recipes on my blog, get a lot of content creation done. Then the year went by, and then I got pregnant again with my second. So I was still running my blog. But the thing about my pregnancies, and I know a lot of women out there either are the same as me or worse as me, or completely fine when they're pregnant. But I don't know how you were, Danielle.
It was all over.
Yeah. Yeah. So I get very, very sick in my first trimester plus, kind of. So like 17 to 20 weeks, I'm pretty much down for the count. And with Raylan, I was actually even worse, because I don't know if it's because she's a girl or whatever, but I would throw up every single day. I had no appetite. I had zero motivation to do anything. Screens made me nauseous, kind of like God saying, you know what? You can't do any work right now. it's just a little wake up. God made me sick for a reason. I know it was horrible. And I know in comparison to some people's stories, they're probably thinking that's nothing in comparison to what I have. But I know some people go through stuff like this, and it's hard for them to let go of wanting to get things done, but they're like paralyzed by either physical disability or mental disability or anything like that. And it's really hard for us to find that balance of, okay, we need to rely on God in this, but we still want to get things done. How do we find that balance? So for me, when I was going through this, it was a horrible time because I was so sick and I just felt awful because I couldn't really do anything. So God taught me that it's okay to let go and it's okay to take a break, especially because I physically couldn't do it. And I think that's always something good to remember is that, you know, it's okay to slow down and it's okay to take breaks from things because in reality, we can always pick it back up later. It's not like it will disappear forever unless it is a time sensitive thing. But that's something that I was just really convicted of, and it really kind of woke me up. Instead of always being on this rat race of getting everything done, trying to accomplish the most, but just really stopping and thinking, you know what, this is not all that life is.
I totally agree. I'm literally the same way in the sense of I want to accomplish so much. And I know that that is my personality. And we're not talking about, you know, fancy things that I need to accomplish. But, you know, I made a list for myself of everything, everything that I thought I would get done when our kids went to school. Yes. And that was 3 years ago. And I don't think I've even touched it.
Totally.
So just anything, whether that is in the professional space or, you know, even in your home. I think that there is this mindset in our culture where it is just this ever churning process of production over and over. And I know that that just becomes a part of my soul. And that's not what God calls us to. You're so correct on that. How hard was it when you know that your body, you're doing the work already of creating this child, but still, like, how do you deal with the fact, like, you just want to be able to be yourself? Like, sometimes for me, like, that feels good to get stuff done. And how did you get through that?
Yeah. I relied a lot on the body of Christ. Just my parents, my in-laws, they helped with Cameron. I think reaching out for help is big. And I'm definitely not the type of person that is scared to ask for help, but I do still get that mom guilt, even when I do ask for help, which I'm sure, I think like 99% of moms get that, right? But yeah, I think asking for help, that's a big one, especially because sometimes in those situations, it's even hard to pray or think or read your Bible because you just don't feel well. So I think relying on God's family and also listening to his word, because screens were bothering me, reading made me sick. It's just like everything. So just listening to the Bible app, that was also really encouraging. Worship music is always helpful, just some simple ways. And then I do want to touch on going back to just comparison and what you're saying about in this culture, we always feel behind. And, you know, I don't know how it was back in the day, Jesus time. I wonder if that's how it was back then, if they always felt behind. And probably because that's kind of just how God created humans, because we're always feeling behind because we always are longing for eternity because he put it in our hearts. So the biblical principle that I really want everyone to like take away from this, and just a Bible verse that I love, is Proverbs 16:9. And it's the heart of man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. And I think that is so applicable no matter what stage of life you're in, is that we can have all these plans, but in reality, in the end, God will establish our steps, which can be so comforting and also humbling, knowing that we don't have to plan our life perfectly, because even if we try and plan our life perfectly, God will definitely take us on some detours for his glory. So yeah, I hope that is just a big takeaway for people, is that, you know, the Lord is still in control and he will establish your steps. If you're feeling behind, you're not behind, and God has you right where he wants you. So
that's so good. Claire, I feel like some of the times, at least for me, the things that are the challenges, even though I've survived them, I've figured them out, I've recognized what they are, they still find a way to keep coming back. There's this verse that I think it was Paul that talks about the thorn in his side. And it's just that thorn that keeps pricking, because I think what happens is God's just reminding me, like, hey, I need you to trust me on this. And I'm the one that has control, not you. And so I'd love to know, So have you seen that occur even previous in your life or since Raylan has been born, where that just keeps coming back and you need to remind yourself, I need to slow down and it's okay to not get everything done?
Totally. I think that can be a day-to-day thing, Danielle, for sure.
Yeah.
Just the reality of, okay, I have laundry right behind me that I need to fold, but I'm going to go on this podcast so I can hopefully encourage other people to get to know the Lord better and be reminded of his gospel and his love. And there's always something to do. So I feel like just remembering that, and also there's always going to be those hard things that you're in that always, we were just talking about this in Bible study last night. We're going through the book of Numbers. And it's so, it's so interesting because the Israelites, God takes them out of Egypt and he's taking care of them. He's giving them manna and all of that. And they can't help but look back at their past and say, but we had so much back in Egypt. It was amazing there. And the reality is they were slaves. They did not have it all when they were in Egypt. And for us, I feel like it's so easy, like you were saying, is just to quickly move on and forget what the Lord has done. And just remembering, even in those hard moments, looking back and saying, you know what? God delivered me then, and he can deliver me now, and he will deliver me now. Even if it's not in the way I want him to, his plan is still complete, and his plan is still the best for me.
So Claire, once this realization had happened for you, what was the process like after, as you continued to build your blog?
So the pregnancy was the only time I was sick. And then I got better probably around 17, 18 weeks. I started taking medication at 12 weeks, which I just wish I would have taken it earlier because I was trying to push through and it just wasn't going away. But yeah, after I started taking medication, I did feel a lot better. And then I would just share on my story things about my pregnancy and my journey and what God was teaching me through all of this. So I took a total leave of absence from Instagram. I posted on my story when I was sick and I said, sorry guys, like I'm going through something right now. And everyone's like, what is going on? I'm like, it's not bad. But because when you're pregnant, it's so hard because it's such a good thing. But when you're so sick, you just can't keep up. So I just said like, I'm taking a break. And then I just hopped back on Instagram after like 3 months. I said, hey, I'm back. And then I announced that I was pregnant, I think. And then I pretty much just took one step at a time, getting back into the rhythm of things. And I would say that the whole time I was pregnant, my motivation was just not there at all. So even getting work done in general was not on my top priority list, which I think, again, during different seasons of life, God will show you different areas of your life that you can invest more time in. So just spending more time with my son because he was only child then. And I really kind of put my business on the back burner, which I think is totally fine to do sometimes in a situation like I have, because I have a very flexible business. You know, some people I know are working 9 to 5, they don't have that flexibility. But if you think about your own life, really contemplate what areas of your life God, wants you to take a step back from, or maybe wants you to invest more of your time in, and so on like that.
Claire, what would be some encouragement to people who feel like they're in that comparison trap, whether they're watching other people on Instagram or just people in their daily lives? I think we could, like you just said, you went to Bible study. Sometimes, if you've never met somebody, you're like, oh, she looks like she has it together.
Totally.
So how do we, at least for you, maybe what are some of the things that you could encourage women and men to step out of that comparison trap?
I love this question. And I do have an answer. I have it all written out. So this is perfect.
Okay.
This is great. The Lord is working here. So a couple of things that help me get out of that funk of feeling behind or feeling like I'm not accomplishing enough. There's a few things that help me. And one of them is a quote by a pastor, Craig Groeschel. And it's, stress is not about all we have to do, but how we think about all we have to do. And I think that is so good because being stressed out, it doesn't mean you have a ton on your schedule, because in reality, most of us have a lot on our schedules. Most of us are busy people. That's just kind of how we are wired to be. But in reality, how we think about that, how we think about our to-do list, that is how we manage our stress. So we can have the same things to do and we can be stressed about them, or we can take a step back, breathe, trust God, get one thing done at a time, and know and realize that it's okay not to get everything done sometimes, you know? So I think that's a really big one, is just how we think about our stress and how we think about all we have to do. And then another one would be just taking care of the priorities that you have for that day in all capital letters, because it's one day at a time. It's 1 hour at a time. You know, what is your priority in that day? If there is a deadline that you have to get done for a job, then focus on that for that day. I know as a stay-at-home mom, it can be hard because you might have a deadline for something, or you might have to do something, but there's a lot of interruptions, which totally happens a lot. But just knowing that that's okay as well, and putting people first. I think that is the biggest thing, because even when we do have a lot to do, relationships should always be first. And that's like so countercultural. Just thinking about how we look at other people and look at how much they're doing, and we look at ourselves and we think, oh my goodness, I'm not doing enough. But in reality, relationships are what are the most important thing in life. And if you look at Jesus' life, that's what he focused on the whole time during his ministry here on earth. And I'm reading this book very slowly. It's probably been over a year I've been reading it, quote unquote, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. Have you read that?
I haven't, but it is also on my list. It's been there for a while.
I encourage you to read it, even if it's slowly. But that's all that the book is about, is how to slow down. So I guess I'm doing an okay job at reading.
You're doing a great job.
But anyways, what I thought was so interesting in this book is that he talks about Jesus and his ministry and his life. And he talks about how Jesus was busy. And for me, when I look at Jesus in the Bible and I read what he says and what he does, I think of him as the most chill person. And people are coming to him with bleeding, and people are coming with their ears cut off, and he's just chill. He just heals them. And that's also just a piece that gives me peace to see that. But in reality, he was so popular. He was so busy. Everyone wanted him at all times, like busier probably than anyone that we know. He's like a celebrity pretty much, because everyone knew he could heal everyone. So that was just eye-opening for me, because I never pictured Jesus as busy. I always just thought, oh, he would go and pray and he would be by himself sometimes. But in reality, he had to make that a priority. He had to actually leave, go away from people, be by himself, pray, slow down. And that's just such a good reminder for me, and such an eye-opening thing to know that Jesus was busy just like us, and yet he was the perfect example of how we should slow down and take time to be with the Lord and take time to be with others. He never turned anyone away when he was on his way somewhere, and, you know, the woman that was bleeding came up to him. He didn't say, I don't have time, I'm going to heal someone else. He took his time and he talked with her, he healed her, and he valued relationships over everything.
Claire, valuing relationships is huge. I think because we can get ourselves just frazzled and like in the process of working. And I remember when our kids went back to school this year, I was just a little zealous about how many coffee dates and lunch dates I had. I think I had one every single day.
Oh my goodness.
I know. For the first week and a half, my husband was like, what is happening?
So funny.
But I missed that. And I never walked away from any of those times. Obviously, I've slowed down a bit, but I've never walked away from any of those times like, gosh, that was a real waste of time. You know,
Totally.
It's always filled me up. I've been able to encourage them, vice versa. They encourage me. And also for those of us that are parents as well, I mean, the time that we have with our children, I mean, I say this to my husband all the time, like we only have so much time left. Not to say that they're ever going to not a part of our life, but I mean that we can be super intentional. And so, yeah, it's so important. So how is it, you know, you talked about like our bodies and like when we feel sick, when we feel maybe just like not good, as we grow and we age, like our bodies change. Like it should not be a surprise to anyone. And you know, there are a lot of women that struggle and wonder like, is my body good enough? And you know, it is good. Your body is good. Like he created you. How did you, because you said that you have a course in that too, of just like helping women understand it's okay to eat healthy. How did that become a part of your world?
So I think it goes back to my own story and just knowing what it's like to have those insecurities and have body image issues and food restrictions, or, the opposite. I know some ladies or some men have, the opposite of desiring food more than anything, or, that's how they deal with emotions. So I think for me, just being able to teach others the simple ways how God designed our bodies, I think is the most incredible thing ever. And I teach this in my course, just about how God made our bodies so amazingly that we know when we're hungry and we know when we're full. So just going back to the root of that and helping ladies get into connection with, this is how my body was meant to function, and just getting that mind and like stomach connection back to help people understand how to eat intuitively. And I think that just the whole idea of food freedom, I just feel like is so important to me, because I am completely freed of food thoughts and, obsessing about food, thinking about what I'm going to eat or what I can't eat, blah, blah, blah. And I think that's where Satan wants us. He wants us obsessing about something that's not God. And to help other ladies get out of that and be freed from thinking about food all the time, and, focus your energy on more beneficial things that can bring you so much more life than just obsessing about food. That is my heart and my passion behind the Smart Sweet Tooth program, is just to free ladies of food guilt, food fears, so that they can eat healthy foods, unhealthy foods without any shame, guilt, or fear, so that they can live the life that God has desired for them.
Claire, I'm sure when you originally started Secretly Healthy Home, it was just an outlet for you. And I think it really has turned into so much more beyond baking healthy snacks and treats. It's about a community. So has there anything that has come out of these last couple of years that you're like, wow, I did not expect God to do this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I definitely have had people message me asking me questions about, what do you study in the Bible? Where do you think I should start reading? I really don't know where to start. So I could speak it into their lives, which I think is so cool. Then there's been some times where I did share, I think it was my first year, I shared about a miscarriage that I had. I had one before Cameron, and it's crazy the amount of people I was able to help through sharing that, because so many ladies messaged me even like years after and said, I'm going through this right now. What do I do? And God was amazing through that, because I could actually help them through that, because I know when I was going through it, I looked to YouTube and I found like a Christian YouTuber, and she helped me through it, and I messaged her and I was asking her questions, and it was so helpful. So I think God really used that story as well to reach other ladies. And, I could tell them I'm praying for them, and, God's got you in his hand. And so I think that was just a really cool thing that he did too. It's just not the healthy baking. It's definitely more of personal connection. And also I just pray that my page is a light, and that, God comes first. And, on my page, I have Christ is the first word on my page. And I never want to change that, because that is the most important thing. And I don't care if I don't get followers because of that. That is what people need to see and know, is that Christ is first. And I really pray that my page brings that to life.
Your mom always, well, not always, she doesn't share this often, but she shared this story where when you first started your blog, you would have family holidays and you would come with a dessert and you'd serve it to everybody, and you just kind of be like waiting around to see what everyone's reactions were.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, well, would you guess it is healthy?
Yes.
And I loved that. So I just want to know, like, how did that healthy component, like, why was that so important to you?
I think it just comes back to, again, biblical principles of nourishing our bodies with healthy food, because when we really get down to the root of it, refined sugar, refined flour, I know there's a balance, and you shouldn't cut out unhealthy sweets. And, my treats still have carbs, they still have fat, they still have sugar in them. But I think what it comes down to is just using what God gave us and trying to stay as close to nature as possible, close to what God made as possible, so that it really benefits our body and it doesn't just keep us wanting more. And I think a lot of times when I have something that's not secretly healthy, I kind of crave more of it because of that refined sugar and that refined flour that spikes our blood sugar. And we kind of just want more. We kind of feel that empty feeling, and we want more. But with healthy desserts and treats, it's the complete opposite. they're healthy fats, there's protein in there, there's complex carbs. So you have a more filling dessert or snack that actually satisfies your sweet tooth and it leaves you not wanting more. You can have one brownie that's secretly healthy and you're like, I am good. That was delicious. I enjoyed it and I don't even want more because I'm satisfied. So I think that's the beauty of secretly healthy desserts is that they truly do benefit your body. They taste just as good or better as the unhealthy kinds. Not saying you can't have those, but just that balance of knowing that if you eat this, you'll feel so much better than if you eat something that's not so healthy.
So you just created a cookbook, Healthy Copycat Treats. What was the process of creation like for you for that? And then kind of just like birthing it out into the world.
Yeah, that was not what I was planning on doing. I was not planning on doing a cookbook. I started with just some ideas of copycat recipes because I knew my followers loved those. So I just made some recipes and I was going to make an ebook. And I thought, you know what, this would be so cool if I could make it a physical book. And that night I went right down that rabbit hole and realized I needed way more recipes to do that. And then when I do something just like my blog, starting my blog, I really do not do something half-hearted. I try to make it as perfect, quote unquote, as possible and user-friendly as possible. So my mom helped me a lot with the editing with that book. So yeah, it was a labor of love, I will say. It's great to finally be done with it. And so I can focus on other things, but just having it done is really nice because I spent a lot of time. It was basically just me. There was no design team. There was nothing. So my mom was my editor. My husband, Will, looked at some of how things lined up and all of that. But honestly, I did it pretty much by myself and with God's help, obviously. But yeah, it was a lot of fun though. It's really fun to have a finished product that I can, share with people.
I think it's adorable. I think it's so cute. Our kids love the pictures because I said, can you just go through this and tell me which ones you want to make?
Yes.
And my favorite thing is the flat lay. It's a spiral bound. So when you are actually wanting to use a cookbook holder, I don't have any cookbooks that actually work with a cookbook holder. So that was genius there.
Yes. Yeah. I love that it lays flat too. It makes it very user friendly.
Claire, is there a way, if people wanted to get in contact with you, if they haven't found you on the World Wide Web or Instagram, how can they do that?
Yeah. So pretty much any social media platform, I'm Secretly Healthy Home. So I'm on Instagram, Pinterest, I'm on TikTok, and that is about it. And then I have my blog, which is secretlyhealthyhome.com. So all my recipes are on there. You can check any of them out. They're amazing. Not to toot my own horn. I've gotten sound people telling me that they're great. I've been doing it for 3 years now. So I kind of know what I'm doing. And the cookbook really has helped me also develop some great recipes. So I've definitely gotten better over the years. But if you're intimidated by healthy baking and you think they're not going to taste good, just trust me and just try one recipe and your mind will be changed, because I have friends that are very skeptical. Even my husband, he does not like sweets. He only likes ice cream, and I have him taste test all of my recipes. And if he gives me the stamp of approval, you know that it's good.
All right.
Yeah.
Will stamp of approval.
Yes.
Done.
Yes.
All right. Well, Claire, thank you so much for joining me today and just sharing your heart and just helping us understand the idea of just letting go, resting, and trying to get out of that trap of comparison. So I appreciate you so much.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me. And if people do want the cookbook, I can give your listeners a coupon. So if they use the code BOOKSALE, BOOKSALE, just in all caps, if they're going on my website, they can get $5 off the cookbook, or also for the ebook too. So
it would be a perfect stocking stuffer for
Yes,
Christmas.
it'd be a
there
fun
you go.
one. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
I loved Claire's realization of eliminating the hurry from her life. It is a process, but God doesn't want us to compare. He wants us to simply rest in Him. And that is a habit worth working towards. It is a process, just like everything else in our relationship with Him. To learn more about Claire and Secretly Healthy Home, visit DanielleZapchenk.com if you would like to connect. And don't forget the coupon code BOOKSALE. I will link it down in the show notes if you want to check out Claire's new cookbook. For those of you that really wanted to dive into a time of reflection, here are 2 takeaway questions. Number 1, what are the ways that you see stress creeping into your life today? And number 2, what has been a priority for you lately? So think about that. And is there something that needs to take the place of that? Maybe if it is not productive or good for your soul. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you could subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, whether on Apple or Spotify or even on YouTube, and leave a rating or review, that really helps others learn more about the Parable Podcast. And thank you so much to my technical producer of a husband, Eric Zapchenk, for editing this podcast today. That is going to do it. Appreciate you for spending time with me. Remember, your parable showcases how we are enough in His eyes. We'll see you back again next week on the Parable Podcast.